the purpose of today's call is to talk about the strategies that we're proposing as part of the Yavapai Passenger Transportation Study, recommendations and strategies for NACOG and partners across the county to look to implement to improve passenger transportation service for each subregion of the county and for the county as a whole for the next few years. The information that we're presenting today is really, it's based on the data and the resource or the information that we've collected over the past several months via looking at past studies and the coordination plans that have been done in the past for Yavapai County, the interviews that we've conducted with stakeholders, like individuals like you that are on the phone, the focus groups that we had this spring, the very extensive passenger transportation study that had great participation across the county, as well as the information that was gathered at the advisory committee meetings. So that is to say that they're based off of really the needs that have been identified from reviewing that data. It's also based off of the reality of, again, what the existing conditions and what the forecasted trends are for Yavapai County as a whole. It doesn't surprise, I'm sure, many of you that the trends for the county are that the population will continue to grow. That's been the trajectory for the past several decades, and it will be for the decades to come. We also know that in Yavapai County, at a higher rate than in other areas of the state and the state as a whole, that the county has a higher proportion of older adults, persons with disability, and rent-burdened households. So really populations that may have more constrained transportation needs or more constraints on transportation and their ability to provide transportation for themselves than other individuals in the county. There are several different reasons why people need transportation, but we all need it to get from point A to point B, whether we're going for a healthcare appointment, to reach services, to access employment opportunities. And for employment as a whole in Yavapai County, we do know that approximately just under 50% of the county population is part of the civilian workforce, but we also recognize that, and those are individuals that largely need transportation to access those employment opportunities, though we're in a weird state right now where many of us are sitting in our homes while we're working, but though there are many people that can't do that. We also know that just over 50% of the population is not in the workforce. They are either not seeking work or they are retired. And again, that just because you are not in the workforce does not mean that you don't have a need to get from point A to point B and to reach services that exist either within your own community or outside of your community. And that's what we're focused on in terms of passenger transportation in the county as a whole. We would be remiss to not talk about what the impact of the current global pandemic is, the impact it's having on employment and economic opportunity within the county as well as the state and the country. This data is for Yavapai County, but it's very similar to what is being experienced elsewhere. While the percent of the number of people that were unemployed a year ago was about 4.5%. That number has almost doubled when we look at June of 2020 this year, and that is definitely largely due to the pandemic and the impact it's had on the rates of joblessness within the country as a whole. And it really points out that one of the critical factors of economic recovery will be increasing employment, and transportation services and access to employment is a critical feature of that. Quickly, we also have presented this in the past. Again, a reminder of how people are moving about the county, and this data is focused largely on commute patterns, but it is similar to other data that we know of for trips for other purposes. So we know that the large majority of people are working, or about just over 50% of the people are commuting within the county, and just under about 44% of people are actually going to employment opportunities outside of the county. And then there is a small percentage of people that are traveling into the county for work opportunities. And in regards to the northern part of the county, you know, with not only traveling within the county, but you would be possibly traveling to neighboring counties of Mojave and Coconino County for employment. And finally, when we asked the question in the passenger transportation survey this past spring, what people felt the purpose of passenger transportation services was, it was a good reminder and a validation of what the purpose of the passenger transportation study is. And it is to support the critical needs of Yavapai County residents to access the care and services they need. And that, again, that was in sync with what people feel those services, the purpose and the critical aspect of transportation is as well, to help people that don't have another means to get around on their own. They don't have their cars, or they cannot drive anymore. We need to be able to access critical services and resources such as healthcare, again, either within our communities or outside of our communities in other areas of the county or in the state, and again, to help people access work opportunities as well. So focusing on Yavapai County, or I'm sorry, focusing on northern Yavapai County, when we spoke with you via the focus groups and stakeholder meetings, what we really heard, again, it's very similar to the information that I presented and that came up in the focus groups or in the survey, and also came from, is similar to what we heard in meetings with people in other areas of the state. You need better services to be able to access employment, healthcare, and grocery and services. And you are accessing neighboring communities to meet those needs a fair amount of the time, whether you're traveling to Prescott and Prescott Valley for healthcare, sometimes even all the way to Phoenix, as well as to Flagstaff and other areas of Coconino County, again, for employment opportunities. So based on that information, we have come up with a series of strategies to discuss with you today. We have 6 strategies that we will talk about. What I'm going to do is to go through them in succession, and then at the end we'll take questions and we'll do the mentee poll, and to then have a follow-up discussion regarding that. So the first strategy that we would recommend for the northern Yavapai County area is coordinated volunteer ride networks. One thing we heard loud and clear in talking with all of you, particularly during the focus groups when we were able to have real detailed conversations, was that there is such a strong sense of community in the towns of Paulden, Ash Fork, and Seligman, and that there already is a strong system of support through the community members to help people get to where they need to go for their various needs. That's happening, but there is, and it is largely, volunteer-based, but there could be greater efficiencies and support to help make that happen and to reduce the burden that occurs when people are volunteering their time to coordinate rides or to provide rides. Again, we feel this is important because not only if it isn't in place, people are potentially missing appointments and not accessing employment opportunities or not getting to the services that they need to access, but also, again, from the impact of looking at the volunteers who are providing that service, that it costs them time and it costs them finances or resources, financial resources to provide that. What we've proposed is to, a lot of that communication right now is happening via Facebook groups, and that is a great entry point and low-cost solution to build on to coordinate that volunteer ride network. You could also use a social app like Nextdoor, and then integrate a calendar and scheduling technology using an app like Doodle. You could evolve that program to then, if there is traction there and someone to manage that, you could evolve it into a more formal rideshare platform, coordination platform going into the future. But as a starting point, we're really building and leveraging what's already happening in the community to help support it more formally and to bring some efficiency to the system. A lead for that might be a local nonprofit organization, and it could be supported through foundation grants or the establishment of a community mobility fund, which we'll talk about in just a moment. As a complement to the coordinated volunteer ride network, as I discussed, providing it, all of you talked about this in the focus groups, providing the rides, people are willing to do it and support the family and friends in the community and help to make that happen. But again, there is a cost of time and money to provide that service. Going to Prescott or to Flagstaff and certainly all the way to Phoenix is really taking a half day or whole day out of a volunteer's weekly calendar. So as a complement to coordinating rides, to implement a gas voucher or mileage reimbursement program would enable at least the cost of providing of the fuel cost for a ride to be offset from the volunteer's pocketbook. This is the type of program that NACOG may be a natural lead for, and again could be supported through foundation grants, support from Yavapai County as a whole, and the community mobility fund. Certainly with everything that we're talking about today, certainly some of the threats to success would be a lack of sustainable transportation or sustainable funds to support the program. So, another important item that was brought up was, again, being able to access the regional hubs, whether it is, again, traveling to Prescott or to Flagstaff or all the way to Phoenix. What are the various mechanisms to do that? A volunteer ride network is one, but there are services that are traveling through the community, through the area already on a scheduled basis that could also be tapped into if we can coordinate to reestablish stops, say through Greyhound in the communities, and to provide that intercity transit service between the regional hubs. This is, again, something that ADOT or NACOG could take the lead on, and again, in coordination with private providers such as Greyhound or even regional service providers like YRT who are on the call today. Vanpools are another option. Again, these are focused largely on employment access and being able to tap into existing programs, Vanpool programs that are running through transit providers such as NAPTA out of Flagstaff, the Mountain Line, or there is a program down the Valley Metro. It wouldn't apply for the Northern Arizona region, but there are opportunities to also look into employer-driven employer-established Vanpool programs that could happen out of the Prescott or Prescott Valley region to then meet the needs of people in northern Yavapai County that want to access employment down in the Simcoe area. Again, thinking about providing access to employment opportunities, say in the Flagstaff and along that I-40 corridor, being able to, establishing a Vanpool run with NAPTA would be accessing, applying for the opportunity. They would provide the vehicle, and if there is a body of individuals that are traveling along the I-40 corridor, say to Williams and to Flagstaff at a similar time and can coordinate those rides, then that it could be a viable option for those individuals, and some of the cost to the individual would be the cost of the ride. This is something that could be coordinated by individuals or, again, a local nonprofit could be the lead on this. And finally, certainly a consistent characteristic of all of these strategies that we've just presented right now is the need for some level of funding support to either handle the administrative burden, though it may be low in the case of a coordinated volunteer ride network, or it is certainly higher in terms of whether you're coordinating something like the intercity transit service or an on-demand or limited fixed route scheduled service between the northern Yavapai County area to the neighboring cities where services are more located in greater density. So what we've proposed is the idea of a community mobility fund. And again, this is building off of the idea that there is such a strong and committed community network already to provide support to one another for transportation, as well as other needs and services within the community as a whole. And there are, when we spoke with each of you, you talked about community organizations that are in place and have been providing services to the community really for years. And so the idea of the Community Mobility Fund would be to establish a fund that would focus on the transportation needs of the community. It would keep resources local, and it would allow community members to really support the local needs, and it would be, it would reflect community buy-in to the needs of the community to reach the services that are critical. Again, as I said, one of the local nonprofits or local municipalities could be the lead of this type of mobility fund, and then you could look to the Arizona Community Foundation as a potential partner to help with some of the administrative aspects of organizing a fund like this. It could also be supported not only by individuals within the communities, but also local businesses, foundation funds, as well as local, regional, state, or federal or national grants. And I think as I was going through these, I may have missed this slide, and I apologized as I'm talking. I buzzed through this one. When we met, one thing that did come up was the desire to, again, access these regional, access areas like Prescott Valley, or Flagstaff. It doesn't have, some people don't have a need to reach those destinations every day or even, every week, but they do have a desire to access them either for healthcare or for services or just to, say, go to a movie. And so since the need isn't necessarily consistent right now, one method to, in a sense, test the demand for that type of service before moving into something more like a limited fixed route service would be to introduce on-demand services to serve these needs right now that are unserved by fixed route service. This could be piloted in partnership with a regional provider like YRT, who are on the line right now, or NAPTA out of Flagstaff. And again, it could be a precursor to establishing more of a limited fixed route service that is on a scheduled, is on a limited schedule, such as once a week, a few runs a day. But this would be a method to, again, kind of a proof of concept testing ground. Okay. So I know that we went through those quickly, and there was a lot of information presented. What we're going to do next is I'll pause and we'll take any questions, immediate questions or comments that you have. Then we'll go ahead and do the mentee poll. And for the mentee poll, we have 3 questions that we're asking. We would really like your feedback on to rank the strategies in order of importance, get an idea from you of whether, if these services were offered, would you take advantage of the services or know someone who would, and would you be willing to provide support for these opportunities in your community? Again, this is the mentee poll. When we get to that point, it is anonymous, so you can offer that information privately, and then if we're always available for follow-up as well. So let me go ahead and list the strategies, and let's open the floor up for brief comment or discussion before we go to the poll.
And for those on the phone, they're coordinated volunteer ride network, gas voucher mileage reimbursement, on-demand service for unserved fixed route areas, intercity transit service between regional hubs, Vanpool, and community mobility fund.
So this is Todd Morris with NACOG, and I guess I just kind of wanted to talk about a little bit about this. We recognize that these are a lot of solutions that we're kind of putting out here, and I don't think that we're necessarily proposing all these at once, but it's really sort of kind of a patchwork of various solutions that we would like to kind of get some feedback on right now in terms of setting the stage for us working with the communities in northern Yavapai County over the next couple of years to implement. And so it really is kind of just a patchwork of various services. There's not going to be one solution that's going to address all the needs. But I think there's various stages in terms of feasibility and readiness for some of these solutions that we could start working on sooner. For example, the Greyhound service that's already running on I-40, there's options to get a stop in Seligman. Greyhound's very open to that. And so if that's something that's of interest, we'd like to kind of work with you guys on just, explaining what that actually means. And I think we're learning that it's not going to provide the highest level of service to a community like Flagstaff, but there are some ways to address some needs for shopping and potentially even healthcare in that. But it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. But there's kind of little things that we can start tackling, bit by bit, to slowly start enhancing the mobility for this region. So just want to kind of provide that context when we're looking at all these solutions is they could work in coordination with one another.
Great, thanks for that, Todd.
Hi, this is Sherry Romley from Yavapai Regional Transit. I just wanted to talk to you about the inner city. We actually had inner city from Prescott going down to Black Canyon and down. It ended up at the Phoenix at the Greyhound, but not enough people supported it up here, and it eventually went out of business, and so did everything else. They had taxis. It was the Prescott, was it the Prescott Transit Authority? And so everything else that they had went out. I'm not sure. And then at the same time, Greyhound took their stop that was in Williams that we thought we might be able to use, and they took it out because there was not enough people on that corridor on I-40. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think you can try again to see what people will, but it hasn't been supported. And I think we probably need to do some kind of polling to see, because it's a little more expensive than what people pay. Like here we have Groom and we have Flyu that go down, and Flyu now goes over to Sedona, also goes over the mountain. So I'm not sure that that is going to be a big one. That would be one of the first things we should tackle. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but.
Can you, when did that service stop?
It was about a year ago. It was, Steve Silvernail ran it, and it was a different, it was under Prescott Transit Authority, but they had a different name. Real nice buses. And they were beautiful buses. I mean, they were big buses, and they worked with Greyhound, and Greyhound and them came to a mutual agreement that it would stop.
And from what I remember, I thought that that service with Steve Silvernail never began. They were kind of thinking
never
about
what?
It. Never began.
Yes, it did. It was, in fact, we were trying to coordinate. It ran about 4 months, 5 months, but we were trying to coordinate our because they had different times. One of the things, people set up services and wait till after the fact to coordinate with other areas that might be able to help them. So when we already had our stops and stuff, we couldn't meet up with their, at their stops at the times they had scheduled. So that was, but they did try it, and it did run. And he had 3 buses, I think 3 buses that he had gotten 7 days a week.
Sure. Real quick, just to, that's really good input, and I think things that we'll definitely look to consider. I think what at least my initial thought is the fact that there already is a private service, Greyhound, running along the I-40, that, we don't really have to add any new service right now. We just simply need to coordinate with Greyhound for them to get a stop there. And so I think it's a good point in terms of, how much investment needs to go in without, truly getting an understanding of the demand. But there does seem some kind of low-hanging fruit that we could at least get some access provided relatively quick. And Greyhound has been very interested in growing stops along the I-40 corridor. They simply just need the location that's willing to serve as a location and sell tickets. And there's some areas that Greyhound needs for the stop. But anyway, just in context, kind of a not a Cadillac solution, but some service that I think that we could get relatively quickly. But great point, Sherry.
Okay, thank you.
Are there opportunities to partner with Broom as well? I'm not familiar with their routes up north, but I know they're driving from Prescott down to Phoenix, maybe not right now, but and getting a stop somewhere in between, kind of in southern Yavapai. Is that an option?
If you're asking me, I don't know. All I know is that we took people down to Groom to go down to Phoenix, but okay. A lot of times we didn't run late enough to take them back home, and that was the same problem at the airport. We could probably take them because they left off in the morning or the afternoon, But a lot of times when they got back late, we were already done running.
Okay.
Ron and Sherry, while you're on the phone,
Chat box.
Ron and Sherry, while you're on the phone, certainly this call is focused on service for northern Yavapai, and one of the corridors that's been talked about in relation to YRT is the Chino Valley to Paulden to Ash Fork area. And can you talk about any focus you've had in that area?
Yeah, we have looked at it quite a bit, and our first step would probably be to Paulden, and we have difficulties there only because the fact is Paulden is so far spread out that we don't know where we could put a bus stop that would help the people get there. We have a deal we do in the summertime called the Paulden Plunge, which we give free rides for all the kids to go to the swimming pool in Chino. Excuse me. And the whole area is just very expansive. We've also thought about going to Ash Fork and not talking with those people, but talking internally that we would really increase mileage. It'd have to take one bus. If we brought the bus back every day, we'd have like 66 deadhead miles and a full day's operation. We know it's up there. If we ever decided to do it, we'd have to obviously go through ADOT, and this study that you're doing right now will help us. But we'd have to go through ADOT to get approval, but we'd probably only run it one day a week. Just to get the people used to it. We have found out that it takes time for people to get out and talk to other people and say, we got this system here that we can use. So we're kind of caught in between, not knowing exactly. And another thing too is we are a nonprofit, and the county helps us out a little bit. This year, Chino Valley helped us out a little bit, but we have to get everything through grants. And if this would fall within the NACOG area to where they could help pay the match money on the things, then we would take a real close look at it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There's another comment by Amy. In the chat, she says that her initial thought was finding volunteers, retirees to run a shuttle-style bus, maybe 2 days a week going to Prescott and others going to Flagstaff. And she's asking to any of
in terms of the strategies that we've presented, Amy?
Yes, that's what I wanted to know.
Yes, I mean that's would be similar to what we talked about in terms of an on-demand service. We would fall into that category, and I guess would be also tapping into the idea of a coordinated ride network or the gas voucher or mileage reimbursement program, again, to be able to have coordination in the services that are needed for the area, and not only coordinating the schedule of when that service would be provided, but who would be providing that service, and having a local nonprofit or community agency be able to manage that coordination, I think, is a critical component. But yeah, this was, I remember in the focus group that you had brought this up as well. That is part of what helped to frame these strategies and suggestions.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So with that, sorry, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, this is Ron Romley. One of the things that would really have to watch out for, or you know, whatever organization took this over, is that you got insurance, you got fuel, you got to get a bus, you got maintenance on the bus, and that's another problem that we have with Ash Fork, because if we did that, we would probably leave a bus up there all the time, and he would come down to save on the deadhead miles. But then you got to get a gas station that will work with you. You got to get a mechanic that is certified to work on a public transportation bus. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that, and volunteers. I think People Who Care has a lot of volunteers, but you kind of march to their time. You know what I'm saying? And if you publish that this bus is going to leave at noon, that bus needs to leave at noon. You know, so there's a lot of things to work out, and the monetary part of it is very expensive. Just our last year with just our 5 buses, we paid on just maintenance on the buses between $60,000 and $70,000. So you know, there's a lot to be considered, and this is way out of the way. To bring them to Chino Valley, we could work it out to where they can jump on the Prescott bus and get into Prescott, and then we'd get them back. It's just a matter of coordination and organizing it. But I think there's a lot of things that a lot of people that aren't involved don't realize what all has. And our insurance on our buses is about $30,000 to $40,000 a year.
Thanks for that background, Ron. Certainly, those are, I think, the realities, some of the realities of providing the service, but there's certainly a great demand in northern Yavapai to help people access the service that they need, and we're looking for potential solutions that can help to address that need. And as Todd said, there's a variety of strategies that could be considered that may be lower cost and leveraging what's already there, and then building towards identifying the demand and then getting on more structured service. So I think those are all the options we're considering right